on it right now.
Yeah.
Even if it was sort of an awkward, she's plucking her eyebrows, or she's brushing her teeth at the same time, or half dressed or whatever. But I feel at that time, if I don't act
sexier.
Yeah, but if I don't act right then and there, the feeling's lost, and I'll forget about it and say, act with it. So is there a time limit? Is there a kind of a like?
As soon as you consider it, as soon as you're thinking, I made a mistake, I was kind of mean, I was kind of a jerk. As soon as you get that, text, write, call, verbalize, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Because that promotes a spirit of trust in the relationship. And that also promotes a spirit of, I'm your cheerleader, I'm not your enemy, it is safe to be vulnerable, it is safe to be yourself. And that's the key thing that I believe makes, marriage work long term, is the two people are in this together and they feel it. We're in it together. We're in it together, and we are committed to experiencing that relationship as something I'm going to value and I'm going to work on. I'm going to water that plant. I'm going to really water that plant, because there's self-culture, so you got self-care, but you got a relationship care in a big way.
You talk about trust, huge. To me, number one,
Yeah.
if you don't trust the other person, then they're always going to be suspicious. Not always, but they might be suspicious. And when I hear these stories of men or women checking the other one's phone to see who they've called or stuff like that, I find that to be just so... I see that, and I don't even know the couple, and I go, that's not going to last. There's no way it can possibly last if one person is so jealous or so concerned that their mate is cheating on them. Even if it's not cheating, even if it's having a discussion with someone else, why don't you talk to me that way? I saw that you said to text to so.
Well, unfounded jealousy. Let's be very clear that what we're talking about is unfounded jealousy versus... actual, we've got some evidence of cheating or evidence. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about unfounded stuff. That is not anything but a person has to work on their own insecurities. And they've got to work on their own self-care and their own self-love and self-value, which is what I call self-culture. They got to work on that self-culture, that who am I really, that what am I all about really. They've forgotten that. They've emptied their cup, and they're operating from an empty vessel, and therefore they are jealous of their partner and friends.
But who tells them that? They don't say that. They don't wake up one morning and say, I've got to be this way. Someone has to tell. Someone has to approach them, right? Someone like that. You have to read this book to
read it exactly
to realize, because very few people have the wherewithal, the strength to say, I've been wrong. Let me go over all the things that I've done. Here's what's going on. I have to change.
They end up in a therapist's office when they're experiencing excessive jealousy.
So is it okay to say, you know what? That's your problem. You're the one who has a problem, and unless you deal with your problems, you can't deal with our problems.
It's not going to go over well that way.
Okay, so all right. So how do you do that? If this person isn't willing to change on their own, or they don't recognize it, how do you get them to recognize the fact that they've got issues that they have to deal with first before they can go on to the relationship?
Where possible, communicate in a fair, kind, and loving way that, evidence is showing that I'm not in any way betraying you. Yet you keep coming at me with jealous. So here's the evidence. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying you need to own some of this. You take some responsibility for this. And if the person refuses to, impasse happens, and let's go into some therapy. Let's get a third person to look at this. My first book is called Find Your Self-Culture. My second book is Connecting, Rewire Your Relationship Culture, because it's all about find your self-culture so that you can have a healthy, happy relationship culture, so that you're not just repeating the family culture dysfunction.
Yeah, you mentioned family there. That's how we see relationships through our
those
family,
eyes,
through our
exactly.
parents, through our aunts and uncles, through siblings, for example, and
That's
how
right.
they get along.
That's right.
And then sometimes when you're out of, in my family growing up, it was, a free-for-all at the dinner table. Everyone was talking, everyone was engaged, everyone was asking questions, and then I realized that every family wasn't like that. No. Like some families, you sit and no one says a word.
Yep.
There's no discussion whatsoever during the meal.
And that's the rule.
Yeah, and that's the rule, and it would be exactly the opposite of why we're all getting together for Friday dinner like we do every Friday, and we know what the deal is, right?
Yeah.
From the time we sit down, we're talking. How was your day? How was this? We're asking questions.
And
we're telling
the culture.
stories.
That's the culture I'm talking about. We inherit that culture. It's an unspoken inheriting of these patterns of behavior. And if they're happy and healthy, fantastic, amazing, bonus. If they're not, and they're causing people to feel depressed, anxious, or they're constantly in a strife experience with their relationships, that's when you got to really do the work.
What do you do when one